Welcome back, everybody. Ready to dive into today's news?
Always. What do we got?
Well, we're focusing on Nigeria today. Big picture stuff, politics, the economy, anything major happening in business.
Sounds right up our alley. Where are we getting our info from?
Oh, from all the usual suspects. The Nation newspaper, Daily Trust. We've got Punch newspapers, The Guardian Nigeria News, and Daily Post Nigeria in the mix, too.
Solid lineup. So, what are some of the highlights? What's caught your eye?
Well, get this. Apparently, there might have been earthquakes in Abuja.
Earthquakes. Hold on, really?
Yeah, I know, right? We'll definitely be getting into that. We also have the Ondo State governorship election heating up.
Ah, yes. That's always a lively one. What's going on there?
Well, there's this whole controversy brewing over a potential tuition hike at Adekunle University.
Tuition hikes, those always get people riled up.
You said it. And then, zooming out a bit, we've got some international news that could have implications for Nigeria as well. Things like climate change disasters and some political shakeups.
That global perspective is always important. All right, I'm ready if you are. Let's dive in.
Let's do it. Okay, first up, those tremors in Abuja. I saw a headline in Daily Trust, the Abuja Earth Tremors in Geological Surveys, and honestly, I was pretty surprised. Earthquakes in Nigeria. Didn't see that coming.
I know, right? You don't typically associate Nigeria with earthquakes. And it's true, Nigeria isn't sitting on a major fault line or anything like that.
That's what I thought. So what's going on, though?
Well, the article from Daily Trust brought up a really interesting point. They talked about quarrying and mining going on around Abuja and how those activities could actually be causing these tremors.
Wait, you mean like human activity could be triggering mini earthquakes?
Potentially, yeah. It's a bit unsettling when you think about it, isn't it? I mean, we think of earthquakes as these huge natural disasters, but our own actions might be causing some of them.
Makes you think twice about what we're doing to the planet, doesn't it?
Definitely. And it's something we'll have to keep an eye on as things develop.
Absolutely. So the article also mentioned that the Geological Agency downplayed the threat. But you can imagine the residents who actually felt those tremors are pretty worried.
Of course. Even small tremors can be scary, right? Imagine feeling the ground shaking beneath you.
I don't even want to think about it. Speaking of shaky ground, though, maybe we should move on to the Ondo State governorship election. It's getting pretty intense.
Okay, yeah. Fill me in. What's going on there?
Well, the newspaper had a bunch of articles about it. One of the biggest things is this proposed tuition hike at Adekunle University. The PDP is really attacking the APC over it, saying it shows they don't care about students and their families.
Yeah, makes sense. Education costs, that's a hot-button issue everywhere, especially during an election.
For sure. And it'll probably have a big effect on how people vote. But even with all that drama, Governor Adekunle seems to be doing all right.
Really? How so?
Well, according to the Nation newspaper, he's got some pretty big endorsements. Like the Nigeria Union of Pensioners, they've got a huge membership base, and they're backing him.
The pensioners, huh? Yeah, they can definitely sway an election. Politicians love to get their vote.
Exactly. And even a local monarch came out and endorsed him, which carries a lot of weight in the community.
Wow, interesting. It's fascinating how those traditional institutions still hold so much sway in modern politics.
It really is. So it seems like the Ondo State election is going to be a real nail-biter. What do you think, listeners? Who do you see winning, and why? Let us know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all these different factors play out. The tuition issue, the endorsements, the whole political climate. This is where it gets good.
Right. Okay, so before we move on to other news from Nigeria, I want to touch on a few more quick stories that caught my attention. First, some potential drama in the business world.
Ooh, I love good business drama. What's happening?
So the Nation newspaper had an article about a shareholder who's trying to stop the 12th annual general meeting of FBN Holdings. Sounds like there might be some kind of power struggle going on.
FBN Holdings, huh? That's a big deal. They're major players in Nigeria's financial sector. Any problems there could have a huge ripple effect.
Exactly. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that. But on a more positive note, there's some good news too.
Okay, good. I need some good news after that last story.
The Nation newspaper also highlighted a new food program being launched in Ekiti State by the First Lady. It's great to see those kinds of initiatives addressing food security, especially for vulnerable communities.
Definitely. Food security is so important. And speaking of things that are important, any news on the education front?
Actually, yeah, there might be some good news there as well.
Let's hear it.
The Nation newspaper reported that the federal government is getting close to a deal with those striking university unions.
Fingers crossed. Those strikes have been going on for so long. It'd be such a relief for everyone if they finally reached a resolution.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, not all the news is good today.
Oh no, what else is happening?
Punch newspapers and Daily Post Nigeria both reported on a building collapse in Ibadan. There were casualties.
That's awful. But building collapses, it's a reminder that we still have a long way to go in terms of building safety and disaster preparedness.
It really is. These incidents are just heartbreaking. And then, just to add to the tough news, Daily Post Nigeria also had an article about a food poisoning incident in Edo State.
Food poisoning, that's scary. You just never know, right?
I know. It really highlights how crucial food safety regulations are.
Absolutely. It makes you really appreciate those regulations.
And then one last thing from Daily Post Nigeria. They covered the recovery efforts after a helicopter crash, which sadly is something we see all too often in the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, it's a dangerous industry. Those incidents are stark reminders of the risks involved. And it makes you think about the human cost of these industries. We often focus on the economic side of things, but it's people's lives that are at stake.
Very true. Okay, so ready to shift gears and go international?
Yeah, let's broaden our horizons a bit. What's going on in the rest of the world?
Well, first up, Punch newspapers had a piece about a former U.S. consulate employee who was just jailed in Russia. They called it secret collaboration.
Ooh, espionage. Always makes for a good headline. What did they do?
The details are still a bit murky, but it definitely points to those ongoing tensions between the U.S. and Russia.
Yeah, and it shows how individuals can get caught in the middle of these global power struggles. International relations are complicated, that's for sure.
You said it. Speaking of power dynamics, the Guardian Nigeria News reported on the Botswana president conceding defeat in their recent election.
Interesting. A peaceful transfer of power, that's always good to see, especially in regions where democracy is still finding its footing.
It's definitely a positive sign. But unfortunately, we also have some more somber news from abroad.
What's that?
Punch newspapers covered the horrible floods that have been happening in Spain. Sadly, there's been a pretty big loss of life.
Oh no, those floods are just devastating. The pictures are just heartbreaking. It really hits home the reality of climate change and the kind of disasters it can cause.
It does. And it makes you wonder, how prepared is Nigeria for something like that? We need to be thinking about these things and taking proactive steps to mitigate the risks.
Absolutely. Climate change is a global problem, and we all need to be doing our part.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that was a lot to take in.
We covered a lot of ground today, from potential earthquakes to election drama in Nigeria, and then all the way to international power struggles and climate disasters. Phew! It's almost too much for one day.
It's true. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by it all. But I think that's why these conversations are so important.
It is important to stay informed and engaged with what's happening both locally and globally.
For sure. So let's keep the conversation going. Head over to our social media channels and tell us what you think about the stories we covered today.
Yeah, what stood out to you? What questions are you left with? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
We're particularly interested in your perspectives on this, given the recent tremors in Abuja and the flood devastation in Spain. What proactive measures can Nigeria take to mitigate the potential risks of natural disasters and climate change?
It's a big question, no doubt. But we believe that having open discussions and taking collective action are key. It's the first step towards making a difference.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of taking action, while you're thinking about all that, don't forget to like this deep dive and subscribe to our channel.
Oh, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next news podcast on Foresight News TV YouTube channel.
We always appreciate you joining us on this journey of exploring the news and thinking about how it impacts all of our lives.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep diving deep.